The Harrington mansion stood behind iron gates in a wealthy Connecticut neighborhood where silence itself felt expensive. The house was immaculate, glass, marble, and steel arranged with the precision of a corporate boardroom. Lucas Harrington liked it that way. Order made sense. Order could be controlled. After the death of his wife during childbirth, control was the only thing that kept his life from collapsing. Lucas was one of the youngest self-made millionaires in the country, praised in magazines for his discipline and vision. But inside the mansion, behind closed doors, nothing followed the rules, especially his son. Oliver Harrington was just over a year old, yet his reputation had already spread through elite nanny agencies in New York and Boston. One by one, highly trained, nannies accepted the job with excitement and left with quiet humiliation. Some resigned after a single day. Others didn't even finish the week. Their reasons were vague when spoken aloud, but consistent in private. The baby spat on them, not like a baby playing, not like an accident. It was sharp, deliberate, almost defiant. Oliver screamed when touched, slapped tiny hands against faces, and fixed people with a cold, unreadable stare that unsettled even the most experienced caregivers. He responded with higher salaries, stricter schedules, and longer lists of rules posted on the nursery wall. "Children need structure," he told his staff repeatedly. "He'll adjust." But Oliver didn't adjust. On a grey Monday morning, the 7th nanny resigned. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She simply placed her resignation letter on the kitchen counter and left without looking back. The head butler stood frozen. The assistant nanny refused to step into the nursery. Lucas had a video conference starting in 10 minutes, and his son was screaming upstairs. That was when Maria Alvarez arrived. She wasn't supposed to be there for childcare. She came from a local cleaning service, sent as a last-minute replacement for a housekeeper who hadn't shown up. Maria was in her mid-30s, wearing simple clothes and worn shoes, her dark hair pulled back neatly. She moved quietly, efficiently, never drawing attention to herself. As she passed the nursery, she heard Oliver's cries, sharp, raw, exhausted. She stopped. "I can help," she said gently, her voice calm but certain. Lucas barely looked at her. "He doesn't like strangers," he replied flatly. "Especially not today." Maria nodded. "That's okay." Something in her tone made Lucas pause. It wasn't confidence or arrogance. It was acceptance. Against his instincts and mostly out of frustration, he allowed her to try. Staff members gathered at a distance, tense and expectant, as Maria stepped into the nursery. Oliver saw her immediately. His crying stopped. He stared at her with wide eyes. Slowly he raised his hand. The staff braced themselves, waiting for the familiar gesture. Instead, Oliver leaned. No one spoke for several seconds after what they had witnessed. The staff exchanged uncertain glances, as if afraid that a single sound might break whatever fragile moment had just formed. Lucas Harrington stepped closer to the nursery door, his eyes fixed on his son. Oliver was calm, unnaturally calm. His small fingers clutched the fabric of Maria's sleeve, and his head rested against her shoulder as though he had always belonged there. Maria did not try to entertain him. She didn't distract him with toys or force a routine. She simply swayed slightly, humming under her breath in a low, soothing rhythm. Oliver's breathing slowed. The tension in his tiny body melted away. Within minutes, he fell asleep. It unsettled Lucas more than any tantrum ever had. By afternoon, the entire house seemed different. Oliver ate without throwing his food. He didn't cry when his diaper was changed. When Maria left the room briefly, he whimpered, reaching toward the door, and calmed the moment she returned. The assistant nanny attempted to step in, but Oliver turned his face away and let out a sharp cry. Maria took him back, and the cry stopped instantly. Lucas watched from a distance, saying nothing. That evening, he reviewed the nursery footage again and again. He wasn't looking for mistakes. He was looking for secrets, some technique, some hidden method that explained what logic could not. But there was nothing unusual. No discipline, no authority. Only patience. The next day, Lucas tested it. He instructed another nanny to feed Oliver while Maria stood nearby. The moment the spoon touched Oliver's lips, the child spat, screamed, and pushed it away. The reaction was immediate and fierce. Lucas felt irritation rise, but before he could intervene, Maria knelt beside the high chair. "It's okay," she whispered, not to the nanny, but to Oliver. "You don't have to." Oliver turned to her, his face relaxed. He accepted the spoon from Maria's hand. Lucas felt something tighten in his chest. That night he finally spoke to her directly. He found Maria in the kitchen washing her hands quietly. "You're not trained for this," he said. It came out harsher than he intended. "So what are you doing that the others couldn't?" Maria dried her hands slowly. "I listen," she replied, "and I don't force him to feel safe. I let him decide when he is." Lucas frowned. "He's a baby." "Yes," she said gently, "but he lost his mother, and he feels the silence you carry." The words landed heavily. Lucas had never spoken about his wife in the house. He had erased her presence, packed away photographs, locked memories behind work and schedules. He believed distance would protect him and his son from pain. Instead, it had created it. That night, Lucas stood outside the nursery longer than usual. He watched Maria rock Oliver to sleep, her expression soft, unguarded. He realized his son wasn't difficult or cruel. He was lonely. And for the first time since becoming a father, the days that followed unfolded more quietly than Lucas Harrington expected. There were no sudden miracles, no dramatic confrontations, just a steady softening of a house that had once felt cold and echoing. Oliver's laughter began to replace his cries, and the sound startled the staff every time it appeared, as if joy itself were something unfamiliar inside the mansion. Lucas started coming home earlier, at first out of obligation, then out of curiosity. He would pause at the nursery door, pretending to check emails while watching Maria sit on the floor with his son. Oliver crawled toward her without fear, pulling himself up by her clothes, babbling in a voice that sounded hopeful instead of angry. When Lucas tried to join them, Oliver stiffened, unsure. Maria never corrected the child or reassured Lucas. She simply made space. One evening, Lucas finally sat on the carpet, awkward and uncertain. Oliver studied him, then looked back at Maria as if asking permission. She smiled and nodded. Slowly, Oliver reached out and touched his father's hand. The contact was brief, hesitant, but it felt heavier than any business deal Lucas had ever signed. Later that night, Lucas spoke again, his voice low. Why did he hate everyone else? The question carried weeks of guilt. Maria watched Oliver sleeping in his crib. "He didn't hate them," she said. "He felt what they felt. Fear, pressure, distance. Babies don't know how to hide emotions, so they return them." The truth settled painfully. Lucas realized that every rule, every raised voice, every cold instruction had been absorbed by his son. Oliver hadn't been acting out. He'd been responding. The following morning, Lucas made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He cancelled several meetings. He removed the schedules from the nursery wall. He asked Maria to stay, not as temporary help, but permanently. He offered her a contract, with a salary that exceeded what any nanny had ever earned in his home. Maria listened politely, then shook her head. "I don't want to replace you," she said. "Oliver doesn't need another employee. He needs his father." Lucas swallowed hard. For the first time in years, he didn't argue. Weeks turned into months. The mansion slowly emptied of unnecessary staff. Lucas sold the house and moved to a smaller place near the ocean, where the walls were warmer and the rooms felt lived in. Maria remained, not as a maid, not as a nanny, but as someone the family trusted. On Oliver's second birthday, there were no extravagant guests or photographers. Just a small cake, the sound of waves in the distance, and a child laughing freely in his father's arms. Lucas held his son without fear, without calculation. Oliver leaned forward and kissed his father's cheek. Lucas closed his eyes, understanding at last that wealth had never been the solution. Love had always been waiting, quietly, patiently, for him to learn how to give it.